let's take a little break and go back into the studio and take a look at some of the archives of Hamilton history. This is a case you might remember. And now, yesterday's news. August 25th, 1979. We had a fireball about the size of the power plant, said Hal Shepard, assistant to the Hamilton city manager. Those drums took off like rockets, said one spectator. As they, city manager Jack Kirsch, police chief George McNally, workers and others stood watching 2 hours later, firemen were still spraying arcs of water into a stack of waste-filled drums at the controversial Chemdyne Corporation, 500 Ford Boulevard. Flames could still be seen through the mist. Finally, shortly after 3 p.m., the fire was extinguished, the hoses were turned off, and the fire investigators and the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency representatives moved in for a closer look. Assistant Fire Chief Don Duro relaxed somewhat, but he was well aware of what it might have been if the contents of other drums and nearby railroad tank cars had been ignited. I think it could have extended to this whole complex, he said. If the other drums and the tankers had exploded, we could have lost all of our men and equipment. If they had blown, we'd have lost it all. Though no serious injuries were reported, 5 firemen and 2 workers were treated for smoke inhalation at Mercy Hospital North. They were Duro, Deputy Chief Harold Browning, Lieutenant John Hurst, firefighter Joe Stamper, firefighter Ralph Buchheit, James R. Lips, and Brian Nuth. Lips and Nuth are employees of Wynn Enterprises, a Cincinnati construction company hired by Chemdyne to process drums of chemical and industrial waste for removal and disposal. Duro said he planned to leave at least one crew of firemen in the scene through the night as a precaution. He said later Friday afternoon that fire officials have no idea at this time what caused the fire that sent up a billow of black smoke that could have been seen several miles away. Chemdyne plant manager Dick Wicker, however, suspects arson, pointing out that workers were either eating in the plant shop or working in another part of the plant at the time. No one, he said, had been working in the area of the fire for about 2 weeks. Wicker also said a tanker near the drums had been intentionally set afire about 2 or 3 weeks ago. There wasn't anybody over there, he said. It was set by somebody on the outside because a cigarette won't start it. The drums involved in the fire contained hard paint, solid paint, that was to be taken to a landfill for disposal, according to Wicker. Chemdyne sales manager Doug Gronauer also suggested the possibility of arson. How those drums caught fire and whether it was arson, I don't know. I can't comment. We don't know yet how the fire started. We've had arson here before in the last several months. I have no idea who set it or if it was set. 9 fire companies, 2 life squad units, and about 60 firemen responded. Many of the firemen were called from off-duty. Workers turned in the alarm at 12:50 p.m. Wynn Enterprises President John Irwin, who was at the plant when the fire broke out, said workmen noticed just a little bit of fire and smoke, and we called the fire department. Early reports from the fire department were that the fire was set in a tanker. About 100 55-gallon drums went up in a series of explosions that followed, shooting flames up to 100 feet in the air. Fumes also filled the area, forcing many firemen to wear masks as they fought the fire. Firemen poured water onto the drums and a nearby railroad tanker from several locations for nearly 2 hours, running some hoses from hydrants several hundred feet away. One fireman applied water from atop the extended ladder of an aerial ladder truck at the neighboring municipal power plant on North 3rd Street. What was it like when we got here? Nothing but fire and smoke, Duro said. Duro directed firemen at the scene in the absence of Fire Chief Dean Hubbard, who was attending a conference in Cleveland with fire investigator Jack Ward. Hubbard and Ward returned by car late in the afternoon and reportedly went to the scene. While the fire was confined to the drums, Duro said, the big hazard was a railroad tanker on a siding immediately next to the burning barrels. The contents of the tanker did not ignite, but the end of the railroad car was discolored by the intense heat of the blaze. Wicker said the tanker contained a mixture of water and arsenic sludge, which he described as a mild chemical left over from the manufacture of plastic. He said the sludge will not burn. Several other tank cars were on the siding and contained a mixture of water and fuel used to clean the cars, according to Wicker. Irwin credited a water-filled moat serving as a fire breaker around the drums with preventing the spread of the explosions and fire to hundreds of other drums stacked nearby. If not for the fire breaker, he said, it would have all been like dominoes falling over, one drum at a time until it got the whole area. Kirsch, who arrived at the scene early and spent most of the afternoon there, said the flames were intense and shot maybe 50 to 100 feet in the air when the drums exploded. Fire officials said they would ask the Chessie system to remove the railroad cars from the site as a precautionary measure. Chemdyne agreed last month to remove and dispose of all industrial and other waste at its plant as part of an out-of-court settlement reached with the state of Ohio, which filed a complaint against the company over a series of fish kills in the Great Miami River in 1976. The company must remove the waste within a year under the terms of the agreement. Chemdyne President Bruce Witten and Vice President Bill Kovacs were reportedly out of town during the fire and could not be reached for comment. While the extent of the damage was still undetermined, Duro said the fire was confined to the drums. Commenting on the danger of the chemical and industrial waste at the site, he said, "I think I'd rather be working in an ammunition dump. At least there's more control." And that's yesterday's news. I'm Richard O. Jones.